You are not being chased. Nothing is trying to kill you right now. You are warm. You are dry. You have food within reach and a screen in front of you and approximately zero immediate threats to your survival. And somehow, right now, you are bored. 50,000 years ago, a human being in your exact situation would have used every minute of it to stay alive for one more week. Here is what they did with forced downtime, and why everything you are sitting inside right now might have been invented during a rainstorm. Rain today is a mood. You close the window. You make something hot. You find the perfect position on the couch and you sink into it, and within 20 minutes, you are asleep. The sound of rain on a roof is so reliably calming that people pay money to listen to it. There are entire sleep playlists built around it. That same sound, the exact same acoustic pattern your nervous system uses as a signal to relax, was a survival emergency for most of human history. A wet human loses body heat up to 25 times faster than a dry one. In temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which describes most of the world our ancestors lived in at night, a long rainstorm without adequate shelter could push core body temperature into hypothermia range in hours. Heavy rain near a hillside or river, which is exactly where ancient humans camped, near water and natural protection, meant flash flooding. Archaeologists have found thick layers of flood sediment inside occupied cave sites. Some of those sites were never used again after the flood layer. And then there were the predators. Rain drove animals into shelter too. And sometimes the closest shelter was the same cave. There are sites in South Africa where human remains and large cat remains appear in the same archaeological layer. Some of those human skulls carry puncture marks that match leopard teeth. Rain didn't just make ancient life uncomfortable. It compressed the entire world. Humans, predators, prey. All of them forced into the same small dry spaces at exactly the same time, which meant one thing mattered more than anything else. The fire had to stay alive. Before roughly 40,000 years ago, we are not entirely sure how reliably humans could start fire from nothing. Evidence of controlled fire use goes back hundreds of thousands of years. But controlling a fire that already exists and creating one from scratch are two completely different skills. For most of human history, most people probably could not reliably do the second one. So if the fire went out, it might stay out. Some groups solved this by carrying fire with them. Smoldering embers wrapped in leaves or packed inside a species of woody fungus that could hold a spark and smolder internally for hours. A biological lighter, essentially. When they found Ötzi the Iceman, the 5300-year-old man preserved in alpine glaciers, he was carrying a complete fire kit on his body. Tinder fungus, flint, iron pyrite for striking sparks, backup plant material. 5,000 years ago, losing your fire was serious enough that people carried dedicated equipment at all times to prevent it. So when rain hit, the first priority was not finding shelter. The first priority was protecting the flame. Move it deeper, shield it with hides, source dry wood from inside split logs or from lower branches sheltered by the canopy above. Birch bark burns even wet, because it contains a natural chemical compound that ignites regardless of moisture. One person's entire role during a rainstorm might have been sitting next to that fire for hours, just feeding it, just keeping it breathing, because that fire was not warmth. That fire was everything. Once the fire was stable and the group was inside and going nowhere, the real work began. The archaeological record inside cave sites is dense with evidence of what happened during forced stillness. Stone tools found in every stage of production. Debris from tool making concentrated in specific spots near where the firelight would have been strongest, exactly where someone would position themselves to work by hand for hours. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found a 100,000-year-old pigment workshop, abalone shells used as mixing bowls, ochre ground to powder, bone tools for stirring and application. This was not improvised. This was a production system. Someone sat in that cave, rain or no rain, and manufactured materials with intention and method. Bone needles appear in the archaeological record around 61,000 years ago. Tiny, precise instruments with drilled eyes. You do not make a bone needle while you are running. You make it when you are still, focused, with time in front of you and nothing else to do. Rainstorms gave people that time. At Chauvet Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found bedding from 77,000 years ago. Layers of sedges and grasses arranged as sleeping mats, with leaves from a plant that functions as a natural insect repellent placed on top. The bedding was periodically burned and replaced. Someone was not just surviving in that space. They were making it livable. They were making it home. 77,000 years ago, people were doing pest control. But all of that, the tools, the pigment, the bedding, is the practical layer. What came next is something else entirely. The Chauvet Cave in southern France contains paintings approximately 36,000 years old. Lions, horses, rhinoceroses, bears, rendered with a level of anatomical accuracy and observational depth that still surprises researchers today. Animals drawn mid-stride, muscles engaged, heads in motion. These are not attempts. These are the work of people who had watched these animals for thousands of hours and could reconstruct them from memory with nothing but animal fat lamps and cave walls. And here is the detail that matters. These paintings are not at the cave entrance, where you would sit for shelter during rain. They are deep inside, hundreds of meters in, through passages narrow enough to require crawling, in chambers that would be in absolute total darkness without a flame. Someone carried light into the dark and created something with no immediate survival function. Nobody does that when conditions are perfect. You do that when you cannot go outside. When the rain has been coming down for 2 days and every tool has been sharpened and every practical task has been done and there is nothing left but to go deeper into the rock and make something that did not exist before. But the deepest thing that happened during forced shelter was not art. It was transmission. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner published research comparing daytime and nighttime conversations among the Jew/Honzi people of the Kalahari. During daylight hours, conversations were practical. Resources, logistics, grievances. After dark, around fire, over 80% of conversation shifted to stories, songs, and ceremony. The firelight changed what people said to each other. And what they said to each other was survival, where the water sources dry in summer, which plants are safe, where the best tool materials are, how to read a specific animal's behavior. This information did not exist in writing. It existed in human memory, and it moved between people through speech. The only way it survived was through repeated telling. The oldest verified oral traditions on Earth are Australian Aboriginal stories describing sea level changes that occurred approximately 7,000 years ago. Those stories survived, intact and geographically accurate, through nothing but people telling them to each other across 300 generations. That kind of cultural durability does not develop casually. It develops in groups that spend enormous amounts of time sitting together in enclosed spaces, retelling the same information until it is permanent. Rainy days were not dead time. They were the days knowledge moved from the people who had it to the people who would need it. And then the rain stopped. The ground outside was soft, wet, undisturbed, which meant the tracks were perfect. Deep, clear, detailed. Direction, speed, time elapsed. All of it readable in a way that dry, hard ground never allowed. The best tracking conditions available came immediately after the worst weather. Rain also meant mushrooms, insects surfacing, tubers softened and easier to pull. Termites swarming in tropical regions, one of the densest available protein sources, requiring no tools, no weapons, no strategy beyond presence. The groups that understood what rain changed about the food supply had a significant advantage over the groups that treated it only as a problem to endure. So what did ancient humans do when it rained all day? They kept the fire alive. They made the tools they would use when the weather cleared. They sewed the clothing that would carry them through the next cold season. They twisted rope from plant fibers that would hold shelters together. They ground pigment that would eventually become paintings inside caves no one has looked at in 30,000 years. And they talked. They told the stories that would survive them by millennia. When the rain finally stopped, they walked outside into perfect tracking conditions and went back to work. Boredom as you experience it, the restless discomfort of having nothing stimulating enough, did not exist for them in the same form. Because when your survival depends on what you produce in the next few hours, stillness is not emptiness. It is preparation. Every tool, every piece of sewn clothing, every length of rope, every image on a cave wall, made during downtime, made during rain, made during the hours when going outside was not possible, and the only available resource was attention. The most important things ancient humans ever created were not made in the field. They were made while waiting for conditions to change. You are sitting somewhere warm and dry right now with more available time than any human in history. The question is what you are making with it.